state judge is now on the other side of the law, accused of helping an illegal immigrant escape ICE. The feds say the judge stopped court proceedings and had her court officer move the man out a back door.
Well, it happened again. Another judge being accused of sneaking an illegal immigrant out the back door of the courtroom and obstructing ICE agents. Now, you're probably asking, why have we not heard about this if we've heard so much news about that judge in Wisconsin? Well, this judge from Boston, she was accused of this back in 2018. The charges were dropped in 2022, but the charges are back in 2025.
Liam, the man the judge is accused of letting go was arrested by Newton police on drug charges. The U.S. attorney says he is here illegally in this country and was deported twice before being arrested last year. Judge Shelley Joseph leaves federal court in tears after appearing before a judge. The U.S. attorney says she allegedly helped an illegal immigrant slip out the back door of a Newton courthouse to avoid an ICE officer.
Now, here's why this case really flew under the radar. Judge Shelley out of Boston, she did have to appear before a special commission where they deemed she did nothing wrong. However, even the governor of Massachusetts is saying, look, I think we actually do have a case here.
Governor Baker, though, says the investigation has merit.
Look, nobody's above the law. Nobody's above the law. And in this particular case, there were issues that were raised that deserve to be investigated.
Judge Joseph is suspended without pay until further notice. McGregor is no longer a court officer. Both are facing several charges, including obstruction of justice.
And look, just like the judge in Wisconsin is finding out, the Trump administration has always said, if you have an issue with our deportations, that's one thing, but do not obstruct the ICE agents. We can take it to court like we are seeing with the two judges.
As far as I'm concerned, you randomly kidnapping folk and you throwing them out of the country against their civil rights, against their constitutional rights. And frankly, how would they feel if some other country decided that they were going to just start throwing people randomly in our country? Like that is absolutely insane. So yes, all I gotta say is y'all need to get these fools out of here. But
all right, let's get very serious for a second. Like you see in the headline above me, there are more and more judges that are coming out, essentially implementing their own policies in which it's making it more difficult for the Trump administration to deport illegal immigrants. Thus, the Trump administration is possibly prepared to get rid of habeas corpus. This is the right of illegal immigrants to challenge whether or not they are being detained legally.
Yeah, well, there are ways to mitigate it, and there's some very strong ways. There's one way that's been used by three very highly respected presidents, but we hope we don't have to go that route. But there is one way that has been used very successfully by three presidents, all highly respected, and hopefully we don't have to go that way. But there are ways of mitigating that.
I mean, this is getting very serious. The fact that the Trump administration is even acknowledging the possibility to get rid of the right to ask a judge on whether or not they're being legally detained. As you can tell, even Donald Trump doesn't want to take this route, but if more and more judges keep coming out to block Donald Trump, who knows what could happen next. However, we need to talk about Kamala Harris, and I promise it will all make sense.
Who saw that video from a couple of weeks ago? The one of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo during the earthquake? Google it if you've not seen it. So that scene has been on my mind. Everybody's asking me what you've been thinking about these days. Well,
Now, here's where things get very interesting. Kamala Harris has just appeared out of nowhere to give a speech, to give her first major remarks about everything that's happening today in America. However, the Trump administration has pointed out, instead of giving your remarks, how about you give an apology to the American public because we are having to clean up the mess you left us.
The only thing Americans want to hear from Kamala Harris is an apology for joining Joe Biden, and remember she was the border czar, joining Joe Biden in aiding and abetting the invasion of our country. And we're never going to stop talking about this because what they did to this country is unforgivable. It is an eternal stain on the Democrat Party. Every day we read another story Every day we arrest another alien they let into this country who raped a child, who beat a woman within an inch of her life, who murdered a mom, who murdered a dad, who trafficked drugs into this country, who trafficked fentanyl into this country, who are responsible for dead and slaughtered Americans. And I don't know what's broken in the Washington press corps, that none of that moves them emotionally. The only thing that gets them exercised is, do we need to have more trials for terrorist supporters? We need to have more trials for gangbangers. We need to have more trials for illegal alien invaders, even though Congress and the Constitution clearly say that you can expel invaders and illegal aliens quickly, efficiently, and properly. This president has literally saved America, and I could not be prouder. I could not be prouder, as I know Caroline feels the same way, to come every single day to this building where we have a leader sitting in office whose first, last, and every thought is the safety, prosperity, security, and sovereignty of the citizens. That's an important word, people. Citizens of this republic.
And to be honest with you, a lot of Americans are not laughing the way Kamala Harris is or enjoying the spotlight. Understand, even outside of deportations, CNN just ran a poll to show you guys how much people do not like Kamala Harris. Like, this literally just happened a few hours ago from me filming this right now. Check this out. It's insane.
Who would be doing a better job as president? Guess who comes out on top? Within the margin of error, but comes out on top. This looks a lot like the election result, right? Trump 45%, 2 points ahead of Harris at 43%. 12% say they'd be doing about the same. But this is the key nugget here. It's not just about regretting that vote. It's literally saying who would be doing the better job right now. And Trump continues to score a higher percentage of the vote than Kamala Harris. This looks a heck of a lot like the election result. We have just seen this in poll after poll after poll. Despite the fact that Trump's favorable ratings aren't too hot to trot, when he's matched up against who he was matched up in 2024, he still, across the polls, scores a higher percentage than Kamala Harris does.
All right, I have to point this out, and don't worry, this clip gets even more hilarious. Who the heck in America really thinks, you see that 12% number? Who really thinks Kamala Harris and Donald Trump would be performing the same? I really doubt that number, but let us continue because this gets very funny.
About when he's matched up against congressional Democrats who we know have had some pretty rough numbers.
Yeah, they have had some pretty rough numbers. So Kamala Harris obviously doesn't hold elected office right now, but Democrats in Congress sure do. So who do you trust more on the U.S. main problems, the main problems in the United States? Well, what do we have here? It's the same exact picture, folks. It's the same exact picture. When you match Donald Trump against his actual competition, Donald Trump comes out ahead. Look at this. 40% to congressional Democrats, 32%. Going to make a big circle here. But the bottom line is, when you look at Donald Trump in a vacuum, it's one thing. But when you actually match him up against folks in the real world, all of a sudden his numbers look considerably better. And when you match him up against his main competition at this point, Democrats in Congress, he is more trusted on the main problems facing the United States right now. In fact,
now, this is very important, and don't worry, the clip gets even more funny. The pollster on CNN even said when Donald Trump is matched up against real people. You see, when Democrats face real people and they don't have the media to help them out, as you can see, it all crumbles. So, regardless of what everybody says about Donald Trump, and I'm not saying he's a perfect president or he's a perfect man, what I want to say is this. When you bring it to the polls, when you go face-to-face or head-to-head, Democrats are the ones who crumble, not the Republicans. I mean, check this out.
it's not even close. It's an 8-point advantage, which in this politics, well, that's a wide ocean.
It's huge and maybe tells the Democrats that their messaging is not working at this point in time. All right, speaking of the big issues, which party is better trusted when it comes to things like the economy and immigration still?
Right. Okay. So we kind of talk about it a little bit up here when we match up Donald Trump against the Democrats in Congress. But what about the parties up against each other, right? Donald Trump has not seen those favorable polls when it comes to the economy, when it comes to immigration. But look here, which party has a better plan? And this is the margin among registered voters. Look at this on immigration. The GOP crushes the Democrats. Look at that. That's a 19-point edge. My goodness gracious. You rarely ever see leads like that in politics these days. How about on the economy, where Donald Trump's numbers have been struggling a little bit, but even there Republicans hold a 9-point lead. If Democrats think that at this particular point, just because Donald Trump is unpopular, that they're going to run away with it like a Heisman Trophy winner. That is not necessarily the case. These numbers should be a major wake-up call for Democrats. Despite Donald Trump's unpopularity in the polls, when you actually go up against him and you put Democrats' names against him, when you put Republicans as a whole up against him, Republicans and Donald Trump do considerably better. And that is why Democrats, in fact, cannot count their chickens just yet.
Now, just to be fair, I'm going to be a little critical on the Republicans and Donald Trump. They are doing well because the voters trust them. But if things don't actually happen, like the tax cuts or if the deportations stop, things will start to drop just like the Democrats. Now, let's move on to the judges again, because I want to show you guys, Florida looks like they have a solution to help Donald Trump out.
We have both a National Guard and a State Guard who are used to responding to different types of contingencies. We're ready, willing, and able to take it to the next level. We have submitted plans to DHS to say, if this is approved, we will go off to the races, and we will be able to do really from soup to nuts, from apprehension to detention, even putting some of our people in the National Guard in line to serve as immigration judges to process this. We can do it. And I'd also say, you hear a lot about due process. We have tens of thousands of illegal aliens in Florida at a minimum that have already been issued final orders of removal. And there's hundreds of thousands of them throughout the United States of America. So they've had a lot of process. They've been ordered to be removed. They have not complied with those removal orders. And that's a very, very high priority for our state efforts to continue to identify those individuals and make sure that they're returned to their country of origin.
That is right, you heard that correctly. Florida might possibly use their own National Guard judges, or at least their legal system, to possibly mitigate or to speed up the process, in which you heard before is a part of our Constitution when it comes to deportations, to speed up the process to help Donald Trump with the deportations. I am very, very curious to see if this actually happens, because that will be monumental. I don't know if we've ever seen this before, but let's continue.
He had to shame you into covering it. And each and every one of you that sides over and over again with these MS-13 terrorists, to the extent that you have the financial means to do so, you all choose to live in condos or homes or houses as far away from these kinds of gangbangers as you possibly can. If I offered any one of you a rent-free home with no taxes to pay in any of these gang neighborhoods, and I said your neighbors are MS-13 terrorists or Mexican Mafia or Sinaloa Cartel or Tren de Aragua, I couldn't pay you to live there. But yet you, with your coverage, are trying to force innocent Americans to have these people as their neighbors, and that one day their daughter may be abducted from their home and raped and murdered.
Now, you may have noticed the Trump administration really has upped the ante as far as these deportations and using way harsher language and way harsher situations. This is because it looks like the Trump administration, they're not only fighting or facing against judges in the court system, but also having to face off against the media.
Something else we got out of the business of, wasn't widely reported, or maybe it was. We had an office in the Department of State whose job it was to censor Americans. And by the way, I'm not going to say who it is. I'll leave it up to them. There's at least one person at this table today who had a dossier in that building of social media posts to identify them as purveyors of disinformation. We have these dossiers. We are going to be turning those over to these individuals.
Me or Elon? We can follow up with the media story.
Well, we are going to turn over these dossiers to the individuals, and they'll decide whether they want to disclose it or not. But just think about the Department of State of the United States had set up an office to monitor the social media posts and commentary of American citizens to identify them as vectors of disinformation, when we know that the best way to combat disinformation is freedom of speech and transparency. And so that's what we're going to be in the business of doing. We're not going to have an office that does that.
Now, there have always been rumors that behind the scenes there might be somebody lurking in the shadows to point out if certain Americans are saying something they shouldn't be saying. It turns out this might actually be true, according to Marco Rubio. Well, he's saying it is true. I am really curious to see the evidence. I mean, we're going to be talking about that for a while if that comes out publicly. Apparently, it is possibly. Now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really, really do appreciate it. God bless, and we'll see you all later.